Hello everyone, I'm back with another video. Today's topic is all about negative space. So what is negative space? Negative space refers to the area surrounding the subject. People call it white space. The area is typically an empty area of an image and lacks any meaning that the image has little to no detail to it. So they do this that's the way to simplify an image basically. So negative space surrounds the positive space in a work of art. So, with cinematography and photography, usually having an empty space can be used for psychological effect, which makes up for a great storytelling device, basically. And it does drive the plot forward and it gives more context, basically. So, when using this technique, many cinematographers and photographers tend to frame the subject as far further away from the lens. So they tend to use a very wide shot to achieve the negative space effects that they want to achieve. So it makes the subject feel more smaller than the actual space itself. So the space takes up, so we know where we're focusing, where the eyes are meant to. So that's what I'm saying is it makes them smaller in the frame and creates space around them. So what is negative space used for? For one, it's used for scale. So scaling in terms of size basically it's all about space basically. So you know the subject is inferior. It's the main focus of the image. They are usually small, but sometimes they can be big, but most of the time they're very small. And so we know where our eyes are directed. It's just about it's done deliberately. It's not done by accident. Okay. So another thing about negative space is used for emotional effect. So usually when the space is empty and the subject is alone in the image, it creates an emotional effect because as I said before, it can be used to tell us about that particular character. Maybe the character's lonely or depressed or at feeling uneasy about something. So it does create some sort of meaning or psychological effect to it. Direct an eye, obviously, because we want to know where the eyes are meant to be. It gives us a clear focus. So the lack of detail, the minimalism used creates a very striking image. And it simplifies the image because the details. I don't really like minimalism that much because of how the lack of details. I'm not saying simple is bad, but I just say that I don't like it's not really something I'm keen on when I get it. I don't mind it's the aesthetic that I don't like about it. And people using it as a thing for social media and stuff. As a aesthetic basically. That's what I don't like about minimalism though. But I don't mind people using it. But I just don't like it as an aesthetic in general. It's not something I'm keen on. So but it does make the image more simple and easy to look at. And yeah. So how is negative space used? So the photographers and cinematographers, they tend to use it as a more than just an aesthetic thing because they want to capture the subject in the empty space. So it creates an emotional and psychological response within the viewer. So it does make the viewer more, it grabs the viewer's attention and makes them more engaged and connects them to within the piece, basically. So they feel more like they're part of it. And it makes an interesting response compared to having so much detail and just generalized artwork. It's not going to make it detail unless you do incorporate something like a negative space because it doesn't overshadow the main subject compared to what a positive space does. So there's one example I got from, in fact, I didn't get it from Google Images, I got it from Studio Binder. So you see the man on an escalator by himself. So their main focus instantly is the man. And then those lines, the curved lines coming down. So they shot it on a wide, they took the picture on a wide to create the feeling of loneliness and maybe vulnerability as well. And the subject is more vulnerable because he's in a, even though the height, I think it's more because he's by himself and there's nobody there. And it's interesting how they managed to execute this image. And second image is similar to the first image. The subject is not in the middle. We don't, it's on the side, but we still are drawn to him and he's facing the wall. The wall color is very striking. It makes the subject look slightly camouflaged, but he's not overly camouflaged because of the green and the black and the beige hat, basically. So we know where we're focusing on, even though the subject does have a similar color to the wall. His jumper is the same color as the wall. In this image, you can see the moon. There's the moon, but we still know where to look. So the subject is very tiny. He's in some sort of wilderness or desert or so, and it's all around him. The landscape is very nice and beautiful, but we see that the subject is by himself. Themselves, they're very lonely. We don't really. It does give us a context. Maybe they're on a journey on their own or something. Does give you context of what is going on in the image. And the landscape kind of doesn't really give much away, basically, which I like. Because you can see still the details, but the subject is the main focus, not the hilly mountains and stuff. Again, the capturing of the top part of the roller coaster ride surrounding the blue sky. The blue sky surrounding the subject. So it's not, so it's the same, so we know that's the main focus of the image because of all the colours. The colours of blue, red, and yellow with all the white lines of it. So the shapes and the roundness and the curve and all the lines as well is the main focus of this image. This, I did struggle slightly to know which one, but I knew I was focused on the plane, even though the buildings were surrounding that plane. But it creates an interesting dynamic of how the photographer managed to get this image because they wanted us to focus on the plane, not the buildings. The buildings just surround the plane to make it for to look more interesting and makes it more. It just gives it more depth and shape as well. They're using some sort of shapes, like lines as well. They've done more than just creating negative space in this image. Even though the main thing is negative space of this image, which is the plane basically, and the greyish sky and the tall skyscrapers, which makes it. I think this is my favourite image out of the ones we've looked at so far. So negative versus positive space. So positive space is just about the subjects or areas of interest in an artwork, while negative space tends to focus on the subjects more than what positive space does, because positive space is all about the details of an image. And that's why negative space is able to simplify a composition due to the lack of defining details, which makes it easier for the viewer to absorb and makes the focal point more direct and clear. So we know what we're looking at and we know what the main subject is in an image, while positive space doesn't give you that. So it gives the eyes more time to process the image and really absorb it without ever looking in many other directions or having to take another step and stand back and observe it more and more and try and see where we're supposed to be focusing. While positive space is all about the whole image itself, as I mentioned, negative space allows the subject to stand out within the empty space, which gives the viewers a good direction to gaze at. So, to directing the viewer's gaze, I should be saying. So, negative space is usually taken on a wider lens, which widens the frame. So, it creates the extra space around the subject, and at the same time, it can also incorporate, make the subjects more smaller compared to its context. Sometimes it's difficult psychologically to comprehend the scale of a landscape, but negative space is always a great tool for establishing the scale because we know our setting and we know where the subject is. We don't really need a second invitation for our eyes to know where we're supposed to stand and absorb the whole image and gives us time to process it as well and process what could be happening. Gives you more context because I tend to like making up stories about what's going on or what could be happening or how I'm feeling during the time of looking at the image. So there's drawings of negative and positive space. So those hands are drawn. The first one is negative space because the hand is positive space because all the details. So you're focusing not just on the hand, but also the background, the first one. The second one is more the hand itself and the details and the patterns that are on that hand compared to the background, which is not even the focus. The background is just there to fill the space. It's just filling the void. So I did struggle with this one also Presumably, positive space is the first one because it's all about the details, the lines, the contours, and how the pot is shaped. And negative space creates a new illusion to this second image. You can see two faces like the first one, but the first one wasn't really that clear to me. And it felt a bit more busy because I was focusing on other things rather than the actual shape of the pot, which was throwing me off. So this image is more about how to draw both the positive and making a negative space as the main focal point for our eyes. So all they did is just drew lines of the building. Just drew the building and put lines around it, and then once they printed, I think they just added the black as a backdrop and just I don't know what they did, but I think it's more like a silhouette thing. I think you can achieve this through prints because you can actually make the image itself, but you're only using the outline of the image and you're printing it on a piece of paper, maybe like a black piece of paper or something. That could be achieved through DIY basically, like art or photography, or if you use Photoshop, if you have the money for that, for the fancy software like Photoshop, then you can achieve this image, the negative space. So, negative space in films. So they both, for both cinematographers and photographers, both use negative space to establish the subject. But in film, we use it as a storytelling device, which can be great for the film because it makes it more interesting for the audience and allows them to connect with the film and engage themselves with the story and get to grips with it. So with cinema, there are there's a unique storytelling value to this compositional technique. And speaking of that, previously when I say it's a great storytelling device, it makes it more interesting because if the shots are just so samey all the time, like there's a mid shot and then there's a little bit of a close up, and it doesn't make it interesting because we always use that when you plan. But if you plan very well to add in the negative space, then you may be onto something as a cinematographer. And it's very unique. Not many people know about this. So, in terms of filming and stuff. So, cinematography involves lighting and shot composition to tell a story of a film. So, you need to get this right. That's what I've been saying. You have to plan it out because lighting is how you do your subjects, where the subject is positioned, how you light them, and when the shot composition, you know how much room you need to put, how much the frame should be, like how wide, to the wideness of the frame. Let's say I put on a wide, then the subject is very far. How are you going to light it? Because if you don't see the subject and it's dark, or you don't, the light is very important how you position your subject. So I'm putting on the wide shot, extreme wide. The subject's all the way in the field or somewhere, and they're by themselves. How are you going to position it? You need to be able to see that. You don't want it to create too much because sometimes shadows could be a problem if you don't get the composition right. If you don't place the lighting the way you're supposed to place it, the cinematic lighting is always key, and you have to get it right in sake of the story. So, negative space is a useful technique to use when it comes to the film's plot and how it impact and what impact it has on the audience. So, how can it tell a story? How can you use negative space to tell a story? But one thing I've said is definitely in the first slide, which I'm about to show you. And I've said it already like a couple times in this video. For one, there was so much purpose for the negative space. As I've been mentioning, loneliness is a theme commonly used in film, portraying a character as someone leading an uneventful life. So it can negative space is usually used to capture the empty space of a room, and the subject is alone in that room with no one to speak to. They could be doing it just gives the viewer a sense of what the character's emotional state of mind is, because we don't really know what they're thinking. Maybe they're lonely because of something. We don't really know what it is. It could be anything. Why there's could be any reason why they incorporate the loneliness of a character. And a lot of filmmakers do like doing that, especially students. They like to do this. But if you execute a good if you're a good cinematographer, you'll know for sure how to incorporate it and how to shoot it and where to shoot it and it's about your positioning as well. So also negative space can be used as a tonal effect to create a sense of mystery and danger. Sometimes the cinematographer uses the plot device of show not tell just to keep the audience guessing. So having an empty space makes us unsure about what was happening, why it was happening. So it gives us more, creates more suspense when there's a negative space in the film, given this mystery and danger side of the plot as well. So the audience, it does help the audience. It creates a new twist to the story, and it's an exciting watch for the viewer. So negative space is a great way of establishing the scale of the film, which is important to the story or plot, because we need to establish the scene of where the character or characters are placed, and it creates more depth of to the scene and gives an unexpected twist. But in some cases, it can be subtle, which a lot of filmmakers would like to do. I've seen it for myself that filmmakers, student films, are guilty of doing that. Obviously, they love to be subtle. I worked on a student film that in short films as well. If you do a lot of on-set work, you will know how it works. Like when you work for short films or helping out with your collaborating with your team on set and all the rest of it. It's always good to get that experience so you know how they work. And you could do a course, but which could add on to help you know about cinematography and all the rest of it. So in parts, negative space can be useful because it creates a sense of uneasiness through dialogue, reflecting the state of the character's mind during a conversation. Because we don't, just gives us more. Again, it creates a mystery and danger kind of thing. It's a bit similar. and it makes us guess more. We doing a lot of guesswork as an audience because we want to know. That's why we want to know. We want to keep watching films because we want to know what's going on. And I like watching films for that reason as well because it makes it more interesting when there's plot twists. I don't like when they do it so dramatically and quickly without you knowing. I like it when it's without you, but when you know there's a twist, it gets pretty boring, which I don't like. And negative space is a compositional technique that can be used to tell various stories for various effects. So you need to understand what story you want to tell and how you're going to make that empty space fit in so you can create the effective shots and compositions, and you'll be able to make it more interesting for the audience, or when you be able to incorporate the techniques that you've learned or that you're going to incorporate. Like I said before, if you're shooting the subject to the wide, where are you going to place them? The positioning is very important because we want to see that subject. And how you're going to put the lights. You don't want to light too much. And the way you're positioning your light is important because lighting is key to getting the negative space that you want. Don't do it behind their backs or in front of them because unless there's a reason for that, but most times you need to put the light at an angle and knowing the height of the subject. You can use like mechanical lights, like props, either like your phone light or something if you don't have any lighting equipment, or a torch or something. Candles, so you're incorporating light from other places. So this film, I think it's called Punch Drunk Love. The character is lonely in his office, so he doesn't. So it creates this sense of loneliness and the details surrounding him. It looks more like, it doesn't look more like an office. It's more like, you know, it's more like a, don't know how you say, but it's more like a warehouse type place. And he's basically lonely by himself. And same with here. We know we're drawn to the lady in the black cape as the main subject. I know this image is very blurry, I apologise for that. And the line as well. So it doesn't incorporates the details of this image. I like the blank space and the lines because it gives more of an effect. Maybe it creates a sense of mystery and intrigue about the character because we don't really know. She looks like a mysterious person. In this short film, there's negative space, the man is the subject, but there is a bit of detail here. It looks a bit busy, especially around here. But the lighting was the key in this one because of how the window light, the natural window light coming from the window, gives us the sense of uneasiness and loneliness this man is experiencing in this image, which makes a great film also. So you can use it not just in live action or real life using actors, you could use animation to incorporate the technique of negative space. And this film is Blade Runner 2049. The director does well to get the cinematographer to place the actor in the middle of the The colors, he kind of blends in. He doesn't blend in, but he's with it and he contrasts with it. There's a blend of orange and yellows and browns in this image, which I like about it. It creates a sense of mystery and intrigue because it's very foggy as well. And the character doesn't really know what's going on and what's behind the fog. And it does create a sense of uneasiness and loneliness. And we don't really know what's going on because, again, the character could be up to anything. He's in the middle of a field. He's not really. Maybe he's escaping from something. We don't really know what's going on. Or trying to hide something. Because some people, sometimes negative space can be used to give us the character's motive of what they're about to do or what we think they're going to do. Uh, the negative space, the astronaut, they look a bit out of place in this image. They look in place, but they're out of place because they're the way their body, the hands and one leg is incorporated is they basically look uneasy. Basically, something bad is about to happen. And the black backgrounds, they're above the sky, which is unusual territory for them because they're inexperienced or something going into space. Another uneasiness just creates a sense of loneliness in this image. The actor's by himself, but the wall is very decorative. But we're mostly focused on the actor and what he's up to. Or we're about to focus on the actor. Maybe that's what this image is. Say focus on the wall, then focus on the actor. But it was a bit busy there. I didn't really know where I was focusing, but I knew I was focused on the actor, but I was focused on the wall a bit as well because of the patterns. So this image, you focus on two subjects, mostly the main character in Mr. Robot. It creates a sense of uneasiness through the dialogue as well. And we don't really know. We get inside his head on what he's really thinking. And the background creates the sense of uneasiness between the two. So this is the video. This is what I used to research. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe. I hope you really enjoy watching this and you gain something from it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.